that we've got who we need, it is, where's Jacqueline? Who's taking minutes, Ashley?
Jackie's gonna have to watch the video because she's on quarantine.
Gotcha, okay, so we're gonna open the meeting at 6:32, 6:30, we'll call it 6:32.
Recording in progress.
We good, Andrew?
We good.
Okay. So, our first agenda item, and we'll get to Shepherd Hill as soon as, I just want to go, it's been passed in all the years that I've been on this committee, it's always been that someone was the chairman, and they stayed the chairman until they quit. And then somebody else took chairman, and he stayed the chairman until they quit, and then I became chairman. What I would like to do is starting this year, maybe in the even number of years, at least every couple of years, let's have an open discussion about, maybe somebody wants to be chairman, maybe you're not happy with my work or whatever, okay? Or you want a chance at it. So, tonight we're gonna have an election, I'll ask for nominations for chairman and vice chairman, and we'll start doing this every 2 years, all right? I think it's only right that we do this. It's not in any policy that I've ever seen, or procedure book, or whatever, or maybe we come up with one, okay? So, to start the meeting, I will open up, are there any nominations for chairman?
I'd like to nominate you.
You would like, all right, and I will accept it. I like this job. Anybody else want to give this a shot? Kirsten, you want to give this a shot?
I
No.
second your nomination,
Okay.
Hank.
Yeah.
I'd like another year of practice, please.
Okay, we'll give you another year. All right, there being no other nominations are closed. All those in favor of myself being chair of the finance committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Oh, do I have to do, because,
Just roll call for the two of them.
roll call, all right. Christian with an E, yes or no?
Yes,
Christian with an I, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, then that is unanimous. I vote for myself. Thank you. For vice chairman, I would like to nominate Christian Castigian. Do you accept, Christian?
Sure,
Okay,
yes.
is there a second to that nomination?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? There being none. Any further, anybody else like to be nominated for vice chairman? Crickets, always, okay. All those in favor of Christian being vice chairman, please say yes.
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 Opposed, say no. Christian with an E,
yes.
Christian with an I.
Yes.
It is a vote, unanimous. All right, thank you for that, and then we'll do it again in even-numbered years, all right? Next, we have the approval of the minutes from April 13th, which you all got. They were in the Dropbox packet. Any discussion on the minutes? Any changes, additions, criteria? I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I wasn't present.
Okay,
I'll second.
I have a second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor of acceptance, please say yes.
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 Christian with an E,
Yes,
Christian with an I,
Abstain.
abstain,
Abstain due to absence.
and abstain from Jay. And you weren't on the board?
Right.
Okay, so we'll let him abstain. So we've got, is that still a quorum, even though we've only got 3? Oh, we've only got 2.
50%. Wait for the next meeting.
All right, we'll wait for the next meeting. So we'll pass on minutes for this meeting. All right, so I did, I know I sent out an agenda, and I did change it after some talk with Andrew, and we are going to invite up
You
the...
have a second set of minutes.
Huh?
You have a second set of minutes.
We're gonna put it off until we.
No, I'm going to put it off because we don't have
Oh,
quorum.
the 427?
Yeah.
Oh, because the 427, you might get a different result.
Why,
But
there
if
were
you want to
enough,
put
there
it
were
off
enough
to
of
the
them?
time, that's fine.
You're right, everybody was here. Nobody was absent. All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the April 27th minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a
Second.
second. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Christian with an E, yes or no?
Yes.
Christian with an I, yes or no?
Yes.
All right, so the April 27th minutes are passed and accepted. All right. Now, gentlemen, if you would like to come up, we have the Dudley Charlton Regional School District going to give us a presentation on their capital requests for the school. Are you hooked in, Andrew? Are you able to hook them in too? Good.
Do we need to call, we have a quorum? Yeah.
while you're sitting, yes, you do your thing, Steve. I'd like to call the Charlton Board of Selectmen's meeting to order, as we have a forum. We have three of us here and Bill Borowski on
Okay.
video. All right, so you're all set, you're open, okay. Gentlemen, what have you got for us?
Thank you very much. We've got.
I'm sorry, introduce yourself to the board.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rich Matthew, Director of Finance and Operations for the Dudley Charlton Regional School District.
I'm Brian Ackerman. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning for the Dudley Charlton Regional School District.
I'm Jamie Terry, I'm the Vice Chair of the Dudley Charlton Regional School District.
Mhm.
I'm Kelly Zella, newly elected school committee member.
I'm Adam Silent with the Garland Company.
All right, thank you all for attending.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
As you can tell, we get a little nervous sometimes in front of the FinCom and boards of selectmen. So sometimes we forget about a couple of things, such as introductions, so thank you. Mrs. Terry and Mrs. Eller are members of the Capital and School Safety Subcommittee that's been meeting for a while now. Obviously, Mrs. Eller is a new member. So we're excited that we can come forward in kind of the final steps before we present to the public and ask for official votes for our capital projects. We look at this as phase one. And tonight we'll go over kind of a review of our past capital projects that we've done in the district, what we're including in this particular request, what is not included in this request. We'll touch on the MSBA Shepherd Hill project, and then get into the meat of what we're asking for tonight. Obviously, the largest item, as you guys are very well aware, are the roof replacements. We do have some funding in here for school safety and communication upgrades. We'll review the fiscal impact and future planning and go over any questions that may be out there. So in looking at a history of the school capital projects, the district was basically formed 49 years ago, and Shepherd Hill was new construction. I believe that was an issuance of debt, but I am not 100% sure of that, but again, I do believe that. 1989, Heritage School was built as new construction. Charlton Elementary underwent renovations, and has been in town since 1958. Next page, in year 2000, both Dudley and Charlton Middle Schools were constructed, new construction. Mason Road in Dudley underwent renovations with the original construction date of 1963. And Dudley Elementary School underwent renovations and a name change, actually, at that point in time, with its original construction date in 1957. In 2011, Shepherd Hill replaced some of the doors and windows, and that was funded through district school choice funds. Everything in 2000 was a debt issuance. And in 2014, the most recent activity was for the Shepherd Hill Fields. And as everyone probably remembers, that was partially funded through donations. What's included in the current request? We've prioritized items to ensure the viability of our schools and safety-related items. So again, the roofs at the two middle schools are the absolute #1 priority. Fire panels, radio communication, and cameras. Also included is money to fund a review of all schools with the exception of Shepherd Hill. And again, the reason that we're excluding Shepherd Hill is because it's qualified for MSBA, so that will go through its own separate process and own separate review. With the last round of capital improvements over 20 years ago, there's much maintenance that needs to be addressed to ensure the continued viability of the schools, including, some roof work that I'm sure will have to happen at some of those schools. On the next page is just a dollar breakdown split between Dudley and Charlton of what we're looking at in terms of costs and specific items. Again, the largest item, as we can clearly see, almost 90% of it is the roof replacements, 6.7 million, almost 6.8 million of the 7.6 million requested. What is not included in the current request are funds for renovations at Shepherd Hill. We have not asked for a feasibility study money in this Phase 1. And based on feedback from our initial round of presentations, we have decided to remove the athletic field bleachers at the Shepherd Hill Carmignani Field. And we'll probably look at that as part of Phase 2 or Phase 3, something in the future. To touch upon the MSBA Shepherd Hill project and the other school renovations, I'm sure everyone is aware, and probably as excited as I am, that Shepherd Hill has been invited into the MSBA program after many years of application. I want to say it was 14 years, but it could be 1 or 2 less. This issue will be put before voters at future town meetings for action, but participation in the MSBA program will create opportunity for a sizable percentage of the project to be funded by the state. The specific percentage is not known at this time, but should exceed 50% based on the information that we have. The MSBA program does have very specific requirements, however, including a feasibility study. And typically, the MSBA feasibility study is rather in-depth. So as we start the discussion with MSBA and as the clock for the MSBA initial round starts in September, we'll have more information on that. Funds for this feasibility study are not part of this request. I just want to repeat that. And renovations at Shepherd Hill through the MSBA program are considered Phase 2 of the capital plan. Phase 3 of the capital plan will come from the results of the architectural study performed at the other 6 schools in Dudley and Charlton under an approved Phase 1 capital plan. So again, part of this is seed money to make sure that we can address all of those other issues at the other 6 schools, including the 2 middle schools. We won't have to address the roofs, obviously, but there may be other things. And it would be great to have an outside eye come in and identify those things for us. Talking about the middle school roof replacements, but before I get into this, I don't know if anybody has any questions on that initial part.
I don't have a question, but I have just a simple rule of order. If you can pull this microphone towards you.
Oh, sure.
It's difficult to listen at home.
Okay.
The closer you get to it, it makes it a lot better.
All right.
That's the rule of order.
Okay, Rich, no, I just have, so the MSBA, that, you're saying starts in September?
Yeah, our start date is in September 2022. And from there, we'll have, I think it's 270 days to bring forward plans for a feasibility study and what the steps are.
Okay, so whatever you come up with for, here's what we're going to do and here's what's gonna cost, we're looking at like 2024, I think that was in your proposal somewhere, but we're looking a few years.
Yeah,
down the road, right?
this is the beginnings of the process in September. From there, again, it'll take some time to get to a point where we ask for feasibility study money. Once we have that approved, it'll take time for the feasibility study to actually happen. And once the feasibility study happens and we've got a solid game plan and MSBA signs off on it, then we'll come back before the 2 communities, present the information, and have some dollar amounts to talk
So
about.
it sounds like whatever is in Phase 1 could pretty much be completed by the time you get approval for whatever it is you want to do in Phase 2.
I would hope that Phase 1 is completed by the end of the summer of 2023.
Okay. I was just trying to get a timeline for how all this fits together. Okay, thank you.
Okay? I don't know if there are any other questions on anything that's been said.
Okay.
If by some chance Shepherd Hill fails to go through the MSBA process, how does that leave the rest of this capital request plan? Because you're taking all of those items off, correct?
Again, at this point, yes, there's nothing included in Phase 1. So, if Phase 2 does not, if we don't go through MSBA for Phase 2, then the taxpayers in Dudley and Charlton will be, still presented with repairs. The school, again, is, close to 50 years old and is dated in some areas. The bones and the structure are fairly good, but, You know, the pneumatic controls for heating are challenging to still find parts to repair. And, you know, we certainly don't have the latest and greatest technology in terms of building infrastructure there.
When we're going through the MSBA process, we might ask for what that list would look like if it were on this, absent of the MSBA.
Well, we'll get the true costs, and then, you know, if MSBA picks up, say, 50%, then, you know, if it's $30 million, then, you know, the bill to the taxpayers in Dudley and Charlton would be $15 million. If we don't go through MSBA, then there's no 50% match, and it would be the full bill.
Sorry, let me clarify what my statement was. Instead of being in form of a question, would be, I could be asking for what would the Shepherd Hill costs be like on this capital request plan if MSBA wasn't going through? And I'm not gonna ask for that, because I think it would be moot. And what I'm saying is that when you go through the MSBA process, you should have a list of what would have been on this capital plan if there were no MSBA plan in the forecast. Did I clarify that?
I'm not 100% sure, but maybe we can talk after the meeting.
I
So it's
think,
a
Jay,
little
though,
clearer.
that their first thing on this phase two was that evaluation that would identify. Right now, you don't know what's in phase two, because you need this evaluation done as part of getting into phase two, so what is included, what's not included? I think that's the way I understood.
Okay, we might talk afterwards.
Yeah.
If I heard you correctly, you said one last question, and this one is minor. I think you said remove bleachers. Did you mean remove bleachers from the phase?
Yes.
Or remove the bleachers completely?
No, we don't want to remove the bleachers, we'd like to install new bleachers. But based on the feedback that we received in both Dudley and Charlton, we removed replacement of the bleachers from this phase one to a later phase.
Remove the requests for bleachers.
Right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so just out of curiosity, why are we not asking for the feasibility study in phase one?
Because we haven't reached that point yet with MSBA. Again, the MSBA process hasn't officially started yet, so we don't know what that cost would be.
I mean, I only ask because, granted, I know it's not until September, but my concern is going at this piecemeal, that there's going to be voter fatigue about continuing to ask for potentially more money. So if we don't have any number for it, I understand, but it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
I have a question too. It's Kristen Kasagian.
Go ahead, Kristen.
So I was just curious if there's any way that the MSBA could be approached for the roof replacements.
For the middle school, the roofs, MSBA changed the rules a few years ago and had a 25-year minimum on the roofs. So they're not candidates for MSBA at this point in time.
Okay, because they're only 22 at this point?
Exactly.
And they typically push that out based on the number of applicants they get for the roofs as well. So within the last 3 years, I think the average is they advertise it as 25, and for the last 3 years, you'd have to be within 28 to 30 years old on a roof, so you're roughly 10 years away.
And then my other question, I guess, just as a follow-up is, these all seem like good candidates for CARES Act or ARPA funds because it's one-time expenses. Is there any way that we can approach it in that manner?
The school does not have available ARPA funds to pay for this. The ESSER funds, we've made the plan available and, you know, made the plan last year to continue with supplementing positions, specifically dealing with social and emotional welfare of the students, nursing, and assistance in the special education department and those sorts of things. But if the town wanted to use its funding to pay for those things, it absolutely would be a good candidate and a good use.
Okay. And then my last last question was, how come the CMS roof came in at 4 million and the DMS one's only 2 million? Are they roughly the same size?
No,
No.
the Charlton's roughly double.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Thank you for clarifying, appreciate it.
Dudley is 61,000 and Charlton is 111,000, I believe.
Oh, wow, so it is
Yeah.
nearly double, thank you.
All right, we all set? Any other questions at home?
Sorry.
Okay,
Go on.
no, that's fine. Okay, Rich.
So talking on the roofs a little bit, if we could review the existing conditions, and we'll skip the Dudley page and go straight to the Charlton Middle School page. 7 discrete roofing planes totaling just over 111,000 square feet. It's the same mechanically attached ethylene propylene roofing as Dudley Middle School. The 2 different roof assemblies installed in various locations, 2 layers of 2-inch,
I'm gonna say polyiso.
okay, polyiso, rigid insulation over 5/8 gypsum board, and 2 layers of 2-inch polyiso, thank you, insulation without gypsum board. The problems with the roofs are that it's an EP membrane hybrid between EPDM and TPO, having the appearance of a rubber roof, but actually being seamed by heat welding like a plastic roof. The manufacturer, Stevens Roofing Systems, was purchased by Dow Chemicals in 2008 and ceased production of all roofing membranes in 2011. The scrim layer sandwiched between the 2 layers of rubber to reinforce it, the thickness of the scrim reduces the thickness of the rubber. The rubber delaminates, flaking, exposing the scrim, and the membrane splits, leaving small pinholes to leak. When I first started in the district in 2015, the roofs were just coming off warranty. And, both head custodians at each school had said that there were issues from day one with the roofs, unfortunately. So there was a lot of warranty work done, but as we'll see, even that never really corrected the true problem. The true problem is just in the materials themselves. There were 3 different types of repairs that we've tried to implement: large area patches, target patches, and coating. The repairs are not lasting. Unfortunately, the patches are only as good as what they're stuck to. And the coatings applied over, wet material will ultimately fail and flake off. So, as dedicated and diligent as the maintenance staff is at both buildings, there's only so much you can do when you have a bad product, unfortunately. And, it seems like this particular roof, especially given the history of the company itself, was truly that, just a bad material.
This was a bad specification job, it sounds like?
It certainly sounds like it, yes.
Yeah, when you look at the overall roof installation, the installation was actually really good. It's just that the membrane, it failed. Single pipe membranes, they change on a constant basis. They try to cheapen materials to try to get them more cost effective, but try to get, good performance out of them as well. Well, when they do that and they change chemistry, sometimes they don't work, and this was one that never worked. That's why Dow got out of it pretty quickly after they bought Stevens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just for clarification, Adam's been working with the district for a number of years in looking at the roofs. The initial plan was to take a look at possibly repair or replace as we start to go forward here a little bit, back in 2017, and then the operational override came into play, so we had to wait on the capital. We didn't want to go back and get that voter fatigue by going right back in 2018, and then we rolled into COVID. So unfortunately, timing has not been on our side here. But in terms of looking at repairs, the repair of the existing roofs are no longer a cost-effective option, other than to stop the immediate leaks. The membranes deteriorated to the point where patching materials no longer adhere, and those areas not repaired are deteriorating quickly. While coating the roof is technically possible, it would require removal of all existing coatings and all wet roof insulation to be eligible for warranty. Infrared scans were performed in 2001 to identify areas of wet insulation by visualizing the heat transfer. Similar scans were performed in 2015, revealing that the damage to the roof has increased considerably over the last 6 years.
Yeah, and the repairs aren't localized to one area, it's literally the entire roof surface. So trying to stop a leak is kind of like finding a needle in a haystack. You can throw money at it and all sorts of methods, but it's money thrown in the wind, basically.
Moving on to the Charlton Middle School, if we could take a look at that scan. Actually, I'll defer to Adam here if you want to describe what we're seeing.
Yeah, so what this is showing is just the amount of wet insulation that is in your roof system, all the areas marked in red. And you can see that they're all over the place. When Rich and I first started discussing, possible options for these roofs, we're talking about coatings, and liquid applied roofs it's a big up and coming product, and it's cost effective. I mean, the return on investment's incredible. But the problem is you gotta have a roof candidate it's a candidate for a roof restoration. They say you can't make a good roof, a bad roof good. Well, this is a bad roof. What you'd have to do in preparation to allow for a roof restoration is you'd have to cut out every single of those red areas, replace that insulation with like kind, find a material to patch and stick to the actual existing membrane that's there now, and then coat over it. By the time you do that, you're probably more expensive than to just rip the roof and replace it. Yeah, so, and when we did scans, it says it on this sheet here, it increased 800% for 5 years. So even if we went and did a scan today, I'm sure that's probably increased another 100% or so. And even, the facility and the maintenance staff has done a great job trying to stop these leaks. But even putting down coatings with silicone, which is water resistant, there's so much moisture in your roof system now that it's migrating up through the coating. So even that it's in dire need.
So this is all either a vermiculite or something underneath there?
It's polyiso, it's
polyiso,
basically foam.
Right,
So
it's
what
just
they-
saturated.
Yeah, so what they do is they go up when the sun's setting on a hot day and the roof is warm, and they take an infrared camera and it'll show you a delta of the, what's the actual functional insulation versus wet insulation. Wet insulation carries basically no R value, it's junk, so they can differentiate what areas are wet in that manner.
Yeah.
That's kind of your true, and then they do core cuts and stuff too to verify what they're seeing is actually true.
So the thermal protection we're getting from that stuff is negligible.
It's nothing.
The heat's just going right up.
Yeah, going right through it. And the cold, it's the same way, because hot's trying to go to cold, cold's trying to go to hot.
So if we go on to the next page, we can talk a little bit about replacement. 3 primary systems exist for the replacement of the roofs. An elastomeric rubber roofing, with the most popular technology being the EPDM, a thermoplastic, typically PVC or TPO, and a multiply / built-up, most commonly a 2 or 3 ply SBS modified bitumen system. SBS?
SBS, styrene, butadiene, styrene. It's a emulsion of asphalt and rubber mixed together.
I didn't realize I was going to need a chemistry degree to speak tonight.
Yeah, you don't realize that roofing's mainly chemistry. After that, it's kind of brainless.
So a little bit about the different types. Elastomeric roofing is a single-ply membrane constructed of vulcanized rubber with or without a reinforcing shrim. Sheets are typically adhered to rigid insulation, and seams are made tight by the 2-sided adhesive seam tape. The base warranty term is 15 years, with 30-year warranties available if thicker sheets and extra cover boards are used. The advantages are relatively easy repairs. Some of the disadvantages, however, are solar heat absorption, seam longevity, high overall life cycle cost, easily punctured, Sheets are typically only 60 mil, roughly the thickness of a bike tire. 90 mil sheets are available. Thermal bridging caused by fasteners tend to lead to premature failure. Having gone through that for the last few years, we want to try to avoid that, I think. Thermoplastic roofing, again, another option, a single-ply membrane, constructive polymers, typically polyvinyl chloride, or thermopolyolefin, olefin, with a reinforcing trim. The sheet is adhered to a rigid insulation and seams are made tight with a hot air welder, melting the plastic sheets together. Warranties, again, start at 15 years, but are available up to 30 years with material upgrades. Some of the advantages are solar heat reflection, white and gray sheets, and low risk of seam failure. Some of the disadvantages are solar glare, extremely slippery with dew or frost, requires specialized tools to patch, it punctures easily, leaks are difficult to find, they tend to crack prematurely due to harsh New England weather and extreme temperature fluctuations. Sheets are typically only 60 mil, roughly the thickness of a bike tire, but 90 mil sheets are available, and again, there's a high overall life cycle cost. The third option would be built-up roofing, a 2 or 3 ply system made of base sheets with a white or gray modified bitumen cap sheet. Plies are set in cold asphaltic adhesive, and seams are heat welded with hot air welders. Standard warranties are available for 30 years with 40-year warranties available. The advantages are redundancy due to the multiple layers, solar heat reflectance, easily patched with no special tools, stands up extremely well to foot traffic and impacts, and the overall thickness ranges from 225 mil to 265 mil. The disadvantages are smaller sheets result in more seams. The recommendations that we have from Nault Architects in conjunction and working with Adam is repairing the roof is not recommended because the current repairs are not holding, as evidenced by the amount of wet insulation increasing 800 to 900% over the span of 6 years. Coating the roof is not an economical choice because it requires removing prior coatings and the wet insulation. The standard metric for a return on investment on coating projects are roofs with less than 10% wet insulation. These roofs were at 17 and 24% respectively in 2021. Additionally, any membrane with coating would need to be removed as well. Replacement is the responsible recommendation based on the conditions of the roof. Completely replacing the roofs will afford an opportunity to repair steel roof decking, which has rusted from roof leaks, and to increase the thickness of the roof insulation to code minimum, which will reduce the heating and cooling costs. While all 3 roofing technologies have their advantages and disadvantages, the recommended roofing system for these schools would be the built-up option because of its multi-ply construction, high initial warranty term without material upgrades, low overall cost, life cycle cost, and ease of repair without specialized tools and materials. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions for, on the roofs, but I will certainly defer to Adam with his expertise and knowledge of them.
I only know as much about roofs as you just explained. I probably couldn't say half the words you said, probably whatever. But the rest of you guys?
I actually have one question.
Yeah.
Is there a significant cost difference between the 3 choices?
There is a cost difference. It's, well, it's tough to say that it's not significant. When you have a roof that's 111,000 square feet, you know, $1 per square foot's an extra $100,000. If I had to put I'm gonna try to put round numbers on it, it's tough. For a standard 20-year single-ply roof, I'd say it's maybe $4 or $5 less per square foot. For a 30-year, it's probably 2 or 3, and then there's a 4-year option as well. Things to remember is when you stick those into a life cycle calculator, you got to take into account, 20 to 40 years down the line. If you you can get one roof now that'll span the life of 2 single-ply roofs. So when you put that in the life cycle calculator, you're roughly saving 2 to 3 million for the town over that 40 years. The only way that it's cost effective to not go with the longer term option, over the long term, is if you're able to coat it, and unfortunately, we're not able to coat these. That actually saves you money in the interim and in the long term.
Okay. Is there a concern about mold that nobody's anticipated yet, as far as a cost standpoint?
There could be, typically when you rip a roof, there's no, it's steel decking.
Yep.
Steel's, I'm more concerned about corrosion of the steel decking. We did, I was working with Nault Architects, the infrared scan company and the asbestos company. And we did a number of core cuts. There's nothing to say that mold's actually in the system. Usually, typically when you have a metal deck and water's actually coming in, that's when you don't have mold. When you do have mold is when you don't see the water coming in. Say you have a concrete deck that the roof sits on, that roof is just kind of marinating in its own water, which leaches into the walls, and that's when you have mold issues. I wouldn't have any concern for mold on this roof. My biggest concern would be if there's any corroded decking, which it takes a lot to corrode a deck, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, does your group have any questions they wanna?
I do. So the choice that you're thinking about going with is how long is the warranty on that?
It'd be 30 or 40 years. I would recommend going the longer term. The way that the cost of materials is right now, and that's why, so say maybe 3 years ago, if I had done the same slides and put in advantages and disadvantages, I would have put down the advantages of going with either the EPDM or the PVC and TPO. It's a lower cost.
Yeah.
That's not the case right now. What's happening with the construction industry and especially in roofing is you can't get a lot of materials. It's due to, I think, a lot of it due to COVID. We can't get raw materials to make actual insulation. So what the insulation manufacturers did is they just raised their prices,
Oh, yeah.
supply and demand. When you got a flat, we call it flat stock. There's generalized boards that are 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches. And then there's other ones that are odd sizes, like 1.5, and they taper down to try to get water off the roof. The flat stock historically was like 95 cents to $1 a square foot. Well, now it's $2 to $3. And it's the same thing with the tapered insulation. That used to be $2 to $3, and now that's $6 to $7. So all that makes basically every roof within $1 or $2 of itself. So that's why it's more cost effective to go with the longer term option over the long term. If this was a Target warehouse where you don't care and they might be they might sell that in some years, yeah, you go with the cheaper option. But these buildings, I think you've gone through the process of, it's a beautiful building inside. Unfortunately, the membrane outside failed. The installation was good. So to have a successful roof, you gotta have a successful installation and a successful membrane. You only had one of the two on this, unfortunately. That's why I recommend going with the longer term, more robust option.
And my other question, and I appreciate that answer, my other question is, as far as the warranty goes, and I like the 30-year, 40-year option. If both towns, Dudley and Charlton, are separately footing the bill for these roofs, which I imagine we would be, who triggers the warranty option? Because it seemed like someone, in hindsight is 20/20, but someone may have dropped the ball 10 years ago on triggering a warranty option
Yeah.
on what we were doing. And how do we prevent that from happening now if we're about to come up with $4 million for it?
A lot of that's in spec writing, so you'd have to lean on your designer, and look at the manufacturers that you're gonna put into your specifications. Because what you want is you want to put in that you require the manufacturer to come out every single year and do an inspection, or you can do it by, twice a year. And they come out and they give you a report and say, hey, listen, this is what I found, here you go, and you keep those reports in a book. And then that way, if they find anything, their job is to report back to you and say, hey, listen, these are the issues that I'm finding. Because most manufacturers, they don't want warranty issues.
Oh,
You
I
know,
know.
they wanna fix something that's $1,000, they don't wanna fix something that all of a sudden is gonna cost them $25,000. So when they're doing these inspections, you're doing preventative maintenance before, you're not being reactionary, you're doing preventative maintenance beforehand, which is always cheaper.
But even if you put that into a specification, which is a great idea, who monitors that? It's not the towns, obviously, even though
No.
we're paying the bill, it's the school
Probably
department.
the
And
school system.
there's gonna be some trigger mechanism in there to, just so we're not talking about this 15 years from now.
Yeah,
Right.
and again, in case I wasn't clear before, we did access the warranty, and there was work that was performed under the warranty. But we didn't have that manufacturer inspection piece, and again, it was materials that were not good. So, you know, even though, as soon as that warranty was up, I'm sure that Dow was very happy, because, you know, they no longer had to accept our calls to say, hey, we've got another problem, hey, we've got another problem.
Yeah.
You know, so, knowing the head custodians at both buildings and knowing the way the district operated prior to me getting there, the warranty work was happening, but again, it was just a bad product.
Well, what do you think that annual inspection adds to the cost of the roof? I bet it's,
It should be nothing.
really,
Yeah.
I would expect totally opposite.
No, that's what I would write, that's what you write with your specs, that's how I typically write specs, is those inspections are at the cost of the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason you wanna do that is you, typically when you go with a lower cost option, we call it commodity option, because the commodity product, you're going to like a warehouse, you know, like a Beacon or a Newcastle somewhere, and you're just buying a roll off of somebody where that manufacturer already sold to them, so there's no real point person to blame. With other, you know, companies that have actual reps in the field, you have someone to call, and even if that rep who did that job is gone, there's a new rep there,
Oh, okay.
and they have to, I do it all the time, so.
Okay, good.
Can I ask
Thank you.
something? This is a woman speaking, so probably completely out of the topic. But the third one, or the third option, is it something you can, so we will be able to pick 30 to 40-year warranty? And say, obviously, we'd like the 40, so we requesting, or you will be requesting the 40-year warranty from that manufacturer, correct?
Yeah, it's basically based off of, material chemistry. You know,
Yeah, so
they make, the different sheets carry different warranties. Yeah,
So if
Yeah.
you want 40, it's not like you have to pay extra for it, this is just something that we request.
yeah, exactly. It's just how your roof system's made up. They can sell you a really cheap sheet just like anyone else, or they can sell you one that's 50 cents more a square foot that triggers that.
That triggers that 40 year.
So just to
Yeah, well,
confirm,
What I'm trying to avoid is Andrew going through this again 15 years from now, because
Right, exactly.
I probably won't be here, but not here.
Yeah, right.
so just to confirm, your request is gonna be for a 40-year warranty?
That's up to the school, I guess.
Yeah, when we do the specifications for the project, that will be the desired approach, absolutely.
Well, you've got some budget numbers that you showed before, some pro formas, okay? What were those numbers based on? Which roof? Option number 3 with the 30-year?
Yes.
I believe so. And those numbers too, I'm not sure when those were given. So here's the issue, and we talked about it last night at the Dudley Board of Selectmen meeting. Construction materials are changing on a little month-to-month basis. When we changed from 2001 to 2022, just, you know, December 31st to January 1st, the whole roofing industry went up 30%. It's just how it is, and it's gonna happen from 22 to 23. So it's kind of a timeline thing now. It's kind of a timing issue. You know, you could ask for a budget right now, and it's gonna be different next month. That's the problem. On a month-to-month basis, we've been seeing it anywhere between 8 and 13%. You know, that's not on everything. That's not on everything. There's
So the
some-
numbers we're seeing in these budgets here, they're good until about 9 o'clock tonight.
It's very fluid. That's the problem.
Okay.
Uh,
That's the kind of situation you're facing.
Yeah, so Mrs. Siniscalchi, our facilities director, went through these numbers with Nault Architects and built in the numbers anticipating the timeline that we're on, which would be, again, trying to get this out to bid for the December/January timeframe with work to occur a year from now. So those numbers have taken that into account and were refreshed in May. But again, you know, if the roofing industry does what the gas, with, what Petro has done, nobody can understand why we're paying $5 plus for a gallon of gasoline right now, when, 3 months ago, it was high at $4,
In roofing, almost every single product is very petroleum-based and dependent on that. And I think that's what's driving it a lot of times too. Even when you order insulation now, like I said before, it was a given, you had a number and you always knew what it was. Well, now, they're not even telling you the number until they deliver the material to you. They're kind of just saying, hey, this is what it costs, do you want it? Take it, if not, don't do the job.
Right. And if you
It's
don't take
tough.
it, they got 6 other people that are ready to take it.
Exactly, it's tough.
Okay. Any other questions on roofs? Steve, you all set?
I'm good.
All right, we all set? Okay.
All right. School committee members, any comments or
Now
thoughts?
we're on the easy stuff. Now it should be good.
No chemistry degree needed for this. So safety and communications, the fire panels and devices. Talking specifically about the fire panels, with the last round of district-wide capital improvements in 98 to 2000 timeframe, the fire alarm systems at Mason Road, Dudley Elementary, and Charlton Elementary were upgraded. And obviously, with the construction of the 2 middle schools, new systems were put into there. 20-plus years later, the useful life expectancy of this equipment has passed. Replacement parts are no longer manufactured, making replacement parts challenging to find now, and it's expected that the situation will only get worse as more time passes. We have replaced the panels at Charlton Middle, Dudley Middle, and Dudley Elementary. So the costs that you see in the project for those 3 schools are just the chain of devices, the smoke detectors and those sorts of things. At Mason Road and Charlton Elementary, we do need to replace the fire panels themselves. But because they are different systems, the devices should be compatible. Specifically on the devices at Charlton Middle, Dudley Middle, and Dudley Elementary, while the panels have been replaced, again, each detecting device needs to also be replaced. When this issue came up, I want to say it was over a year ago. I don't know if it was quite 2 years ago. The district did discuss the situation with the fire departments in each town, and we were given a specific time frame to make this investment, because if we have to replace a single smoke detector, we can't do that. We have to replace the entire chain of smoke detectors, so there may be 20 or 30 involved or more in any particular run. And we had made the commitment that we would ideally, again, bring forward a capital project to do all of this in one fell swoop. But if that was not successful, we weren't able to do it, that we would try to get all of this work done in 5 years. And as you guys are aware, the operating budget for the district is challenged, and as a result, it would be ideal to pay for this through a capital project, or again, through ARPA funds or something along those lines. Again, continuing with safety and communication, the camera infrastructure. So the camera systems at each school in the district are not uniform, and for the most part remain analog cameras that may or may not be recorded. In the spring of 2020, the district received a grant which allowed us to install a door entry system, including keyless fob entry devices and the door entry intercom systems. These digital devices are all the same and fit into the Avigilon system. The next necessary step is to replace the existing analog cameras with newer digital models and expand the Avigilon system, so it's based in each building rather than centrally at Shepherd Hill, again with one camera. Our network can handle that traffic, but the ideal build-out would be having the system at each individual school. An added benefit to the system is that it'll be able to be accessed remotely by public safety officials, which will maximize efficient response to any incident.
When you say they were all controlled by Shepherd Hill, you mean all the analog cameras show up on TV screens?
No.
Okay.
The door entry camera, which is
Okay.
digital, is fed to a server over at Shepherd Hill, and we'd like to have a server at each individual school. Radio communication. The radio system in the district is solid and actually has decent range and coverage at each of our schools within the individual town. So schools in Dudley can talk to each other, schools in Charlton can talk to each other. What we can't do currently is talk from Dudley to Charlton on the radios. So we're looking at investing to a digital platform which would allow that type of communication, and to create channels for school staff to immediately reach out to 911 dispatch in each town. Again, you guys are aware that the dispatch in Dudley is different than the dispatch in Charlton, as well as have an emergency operations channel in the event that it's ever needed. These are capabilities that we want available, but hope, again, that they're never needed. Again, it just makes sense in today's world that we have that type of capability since it exists. The fiscal ramifications, what will Phase 1 cost taxpayers? And I want to thank Ashley for providing this information. So the way that we've structured this is the roofs would be financed for a 15-year bond, and everything else for a 5-year bond, since it's much lower costs. So the tax increase for the first 5 years of the bond, based on this, the current 2022 information, would be 31 cents, and the increase for the last 10 years of the bond would be 18 cents. So the average increase on the tax bill in the first 5 years would be $107.62, and it would decrease down to $61.02 for the last 10 years. Again, that's assuming that the debt is excluded from Prop 2.5, and I'm sure that's something that we'll talk about in a bit.
And so what total number, is this based on the $7 million number?
Yes.
Okay. And you said it's broken up into,
The roofs would be a 15-year bond, and everything else would be a 5-year bond.
okay, but all starting on year 1?
Yes.
Actually, okay, and so that's why it drops down, because after 5 years, right?
It drops off, yeah.
It drops off, okay. But it is based on the 7 million, what was that number that you showed us in the beginning, on the $7 million?
Yeah, exactly. We've worked with David Eisenthal from Unibank on those debt projections.
Mhm.
For future planning purposes, again, we're excited that Shepherd Hill Regional High School has finally been accepted into the Mass School Building Authority, MSBA program. This is viewed as Phase 2 of the district capital planning. No costs for this potential project are included here, but we do need to ensure that all of the other buildings are brought up to date for infrastructure, building envelope, and remain viable, safe buildings for the next 20 years. Phase 1 capital funds does include money for an architectural review of all of the buildings, with the exception of Shepherd Hill. That architectural review will be the basis for future capital planning, what we're referring to as Phase 3 at this point in time. We do have some meetings with the public coming up next Tuesday, June 21st, at Charlton Middle School in the auditorium at 6 p.m. The following Tuesday, June 28th, at Dudley Middle School, again at 6 p.m. School committee will likely vote to authorize, it's hoped at least, the debt at its meeting next week, Wednesday, June 22nd. We're looking to hold a special election to authorize the regional school debt. The potential date is Tuesday, September 27th. But I have a call with both town clerks tomorrow to discuss this further and finalize this information. And then just looking a little bit more into the future, Phase 2, a feasibility study will be brought forward in spring of 2023, and we'd probably be looking for project authorization in spring of 2024. And Phase 3 will be based on the architectural review and could possibly be done in conjunction with Phase 2, depending on, what we see and what we find. I don't know if there are any other specific questions?
The money needed to fund these two phases, 2 and 3, would overlap this Phase 1 to some degree, probably for a couple of years in that first 5-year period, and the other things drop off after 5 years, but then this picks up.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm just going back to somebody made the comment, how many times can we go back? Okay, and so I'm kind of like looking at that timeline, when would we be hitting the voters for, yeah, we know we just asked you for this override, but, okay.
Yeah, no, these are not easy issues, and if MSBA had been approved a couple of years ago, then it would have fit in perfect timing with what we're doing right now for Phase 1. If COVID hadn't hit, we would have done this Phase 1 approach a few years ago. But again, you know, the request for turning the capital projects in 2017-18 over to an operational override, delayed, you know, bringing these things forward, and again, the impact of COVID certainly set everything and everybody back a couple of years.
Yeah. And it's even gonna be tough to project the numbers, because, as you said before, MSBA could do 50%, they could do 30%, they could do nothing, as someone said, okay.
Yep, and that's what we'll find out
Right.
as we start this process,
Right.
the MSBA process in September.
Okay.
It seems unlikely that they would be under 50% from what I have understood from being at
Okay.
meetings. Is that accurate?
Yeah, as said in the presentation here, you know, the expectation is that it's going to be over 50%.
Yeah,
And it could be a good amount over 50%, which would be great for us,
yeah,
but we don't know that yet.
right.
That projected 7 million, that is without getting that MSBA money, right? Is that what it is, just to clarify for myself?
Yes, the 7 million is just for the projects we talked about here tonight. The roofs, the safety equipment, and the architectural study.
But she brings up, Deja brings up a good point. So as far as, maybe I missed it on the slide, but as far as the time frame for the roof and the security measures, I thought I read earlier that could be done next summer.
Yeah, that would be the intention.
Yeah, if we get the
If it-
override vote on September 22nd, okay? This is all dependent on getting that override vote.
Well, it's,
It'll-
just for,
Or am I,
just for clarification purposes, it's not an override vote at the last week of September or the first week of October.
Yeah.
It's a vote of the two towns to authorize the regional school committee debt.
okay,
Okay?
How we
Because-
fund it is a different issue.
Yes, how the towns to fund it, it will be a separate conversation and
a
separate.
second vote.
The second vote will be needed to authorize the debt
Yeah.
exclusion.
Exactly.
That's-
Perhaps.
If that was the direction that the town decided to go,
Right.
the second vote would be
Right.
required.
And then someone said, all right, so Charlton pays for Charlton, Dudley pays for Dudley. How does that work in, as far as the numbers? I know you had the two columns, so we're only responsible for our first column, and Dudley's responsible for the other column.
Exactly. I'm sure Dudley would be pleased if you wanted to pick up their tab.
Yeah, no, I know. They would be,
Yeah,
okay?
you pick it up.
And vice versa, okay? They'd pick it up for us, but that's what I wanted to clarify in my own head, okay? When we look at it, we're just looking at the Charlton schools.
Yes.
Right, so when we look at that chart, I could then better say, okay, this is really what we're gonna be after, okay? And again, the budget numbers that you put out there were based on a particular kind of roof, option 3 with, okay, just for the Charlton schools.
Hmm.
Okay. All right, I missed that on my first go-through on this.
It's a lot of information.
Yes, it
No,
is.
no, it is a lot.
There is a
And
lot.
I want to
There
make
is a
sure
lot.
people at home understand it. So Andrew, and I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. So if it's 4 million for a roof and 400,000 for security, it's a 15-year, what does that come out?
So-
On an annual, how does that hit our budget on an
The
annual?
first year of debt service with both projects included is approximately, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, but about $670,000. I believe after year 3 is approximate, or I'm sorry, after year 5, it goes down to approximately 350. I'm trying to remember if that's the right.
Yeah, it may be a little bit higher on the second one, after the 5 years, but
I'll look
you've
up.
got the rough idea, yes.
I have it here, Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
So for the full, it's technically year 2, because it's when the principal payment hits for the roofs. At the highest, you're at 652,000, and then once the panels fall off, you're at 370,000. So it's after year 6, in year 6.
Okay,
Whether or not that needs a debt exclusion, that's it.
Yeah.
We'll determine that later.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part of it.
Hank, I'm sorry,
Yeah, go
just a
ahead.
question about kind of where Steve's going, is, let's just assume for a second that the September 27th vote is in the affirmative, and we're on the hook, I'm just gonna ballpark around it, around $5 million for the town of Charlton. I talked to Ashley about this briefly, but do we know how quickly we have to find a way to fund it? Meaning, is it within 90 days we have to decide whether it's a debt exclusion or whether we're gonna find some other way? Or what's the expectation for going back to the schools to say, yeah, okay, this passed, now Town of Charlton, here's, how are you gonna pay for it?
So the first year, assuming that this were to pass, we would issue bans. Those bans would not, there would be no fiscal impact to anything in fiscal '23. Those bans would be payable in fiscal '24. The logical assumption would be that we would then go out to bond, but there may be a case to be made to hold off on bonding until we do some of the other phases and just continue to roll those bans forward for a couple of years. I think you can do that for up to 10 years. But I think, again, that those are all conversations to be had in the future. In terms of providing a vote for excluding the debt from Prop 2.5, that's not something that would be needed until the annual town meeting that prepares for fiscal '24, or any time in the future. Again, it's my understanding that you can be 3 years into a project and then decide, okay, this is something that we want to take to the voters for a debt exclusion.
Yeah, Rich, that's all, because I think you'll see, at least historically, there's been a general aversion. Again, obviously a different board now, but there's been a general aversion to special elections for debt exclusions, things on those lines. So, if I had any say on it, I would rather wait to do a vote or final decision until our regular election in May, along with town meeting in May. But again, I'm just one of five, so it'd be, again, to your point, I think we need to discuss it in the future, but, Steve, that's just something I think our board needs to think around of when we would actually put these things on a ballot, if at all, unless we can find a way to absorb it within the operating budget.
Andrew's got a question.
More of a clarification, I think one thing to consider too is that once the special election to authorize the debt passes, essentially the town then becomes on the hook for the money. So then it just becomes a matter of how it pays for it. So a failed debt exclusion would not alleviate the town's responsibility to pay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if it goes forward, yeah, then we have to find a way to pay for it. I mean, Andrew, I suppose where I'm thinking is, would we want to, again, I'm talking out loud and I'm probably putting the cart before the horse of, would we want to present to the voters option one of, yeah, this is what's going to happen if we do it in the operating budget, and if that fails, then we do a debt exclusion, knowing that no matter what, we have to pay for it. So again, I think it's something that we can discuss in the future, but, Rich, that was helpful to know that, for example, we wouldn't have to call a special town meeting in December and also have a ballot vote then, if the Board of Selectmen decided that we wanted to do, along with FinCom obviously, wanted to do a debt exclusion. So it sounds like we do have some time to figure out the how in this, as opposed to the what, because, if it passes, that's the what, and then it has to happen.
Yeah, and the reason that we do have to have a special election to have the debt authorized by the citizens in both Dudley and Charlton is because of the regional agreement. That particular section, there is a different option that is now available that was not available back in 1973 when the regional agreement was put together. So we're operating under those former rules, which require a school committee to vote to authorize the debt, and then an election in each town, a common election in each town that is sponsored by the district.
That actually brings up an interesting question. So this isn't like a typical school budget ask. If Dudley were, if this were to fail in Dudley and it passed in Charlton Middle School would still get a new roof.
I think it's the overall vote of both communities combined.
So we could vote yes, Dudley could vote no.
And if you had 5 yeses and Dudley had 3 noes, it would still pass, is my understanding.
That kind of convoluted the soup a little bit, didn't it? Wow.
Are the asks being broken up separately, meaning, or is it going to be in the aggregate? So for example, is it going to be, the vote would be yes to do communication, safety, and roof? Or is it going to be one question for the roof, one question for the communication, one question for safety?
The intention would be one question to cover all items.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
What other
That was
questions?
eye-opening, yeah.
I would emphasize that next Tuesday and the following Tuesday at these hearings, you better be real clear, okay? You heard the questions tonight, and I'm not gonna say we're more knowledgeable than anybody, but we got a feel for this, all right? If you confuse people from the get-go, it is gonna be hard to win them back after that, all right? I just put that out there, that make sure, especially the debt exclusion, I was confused on that. Make sure the debt exclusion and the authorization vote and all the rest of it, and Andrew, make that point. Once you vote yes, we're on the hook, all right? Let's not get ourselves into a,
And I know that question came up as far as use of ARPA money, you know, and could it be used? So like, let's just say a size, like 50% of the cost the town decided to pay from something like ARPA. Essentially, that would take the school then to go out and still do the same loan authorization and borrowing, but it would be at the cost minus whatever funds are applied to.
yeah. Okay.
And we've done roofs recently with those funds, so it is something that qualifies, you know,
Mhm.
because I know you have to submit what you're spending that to the federal government or whatever.
Yeah.
And, they have been approved, so
Yeah.
it is eligible.
Okay.
I would suggest a timeline or something very simple and graphic for the general public,
Mhm.
because it's gonna be difficult. I would say come up with something that's very simple, but kind of shows it on one page for the average person. I think that'll be very helpful.
Mhm.
So that's the better just on the point.
All right, and just for Finance Committee, so if your intention is to attend next Tuesday at Charlton Middle, please let me know, because if more than 3 of us show up, we have to post an agenda. Because we will be in meeting, okay? So just let me know ahead of time so I can get to Andrew and say, okay, yeah, we're gonna have a scheduled meeting for that day, all right? Same thing with you guys, right? Well, that's that's actually your actual meeting night, isn't it? Tuesday nights?
No,
Until
No,
July.
No.
we have nothing until July.
no, 24th?
But still, if you guys all show up, you gotta post a meeting. That's all. I just wanna let these guys know that I need to know ahead of time if they wanna attend that meeting. Any other questions that we have?
Yeah. Hey, not so much a question, as a quick statement. I know that there's a discussion on, I believe, tomorrow to talk around dates. But again, at least for myself, and I think perhaps others, that if it were possible to do it on the day of the primary, I know Dudley had very similar questions last night, whether it's a separate ballot or not. Again, I don't know the legality of putting on this type of question on a state ballot, and I know it's gonna be discussed tomorrow, but if there were a way to do it as part of the state primary on September 6th, I think that would be that would be looked upon more favorably instead of a special election. Again, I don't know if it's legal, but, you know, anything that we can brainstorm around that, I think would be helpful.
Because it is a special election for the regional school district debt authorization, it would need to be a separate ballot. It would need,
Right.
it still is a distinct election from whatever is happening with the primaries.
But we could still have it on the same day hypothetically.
Conceptually, yes.
Yeah, so again, you know, I think when we have those conversations with the town clerks, again, I know the selectmen don't have a real say in this, but again, just my personal view is that, again, I'm kind of averse to specials if we can avoid them. So if there were a way to do it on a primary day to get more people out there, that would please me greatly, I would just say that.
All right,
Yeah,
well,
and
that's-
then you include several school bus full of kids with yellow rain slickers.
That's, thank goodness that's a question for the Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator, not the Finance Committee, and so we're out of that.
Oh, the Morton Salt kids.
Right. So, do we have any further questions? Anybody have any further questions of Rich and his group? Yeah? If not, then I will thank you for coming tonight and explaining this to us. Not quite sure we all got it 100%, but we're close. And I know that you're available for questions if we have questions.
Always, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you to the Board of Selectmen for attending this evening, and thank you to both boards and committees for your support during the FY '23 budget process. It was much welcomed.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, I don't know whether you're gonna stick around for our meeting, or you want to, I'll give you 2 minutes to adjourn your own meeting and do your thing.
Steve, looking to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Second.
Roll call, but
I can't say second. Aye.
Yeah,
Unanimous.
you gotta do a roll call.
No, it's just Bill's got to roll.
Bill.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna do roll call. Audra?
already did, yes, to go.
We already did.
Bill? Steve? Aye.
Thank you.
We're adjourned. Thank you,
Nice
everyone.
one.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Wow, that was.
Sure. We can discuss.
Yeah.
I understand where you're going, but I'm not gonna say anything.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Night, Rich.
Have a good night, all.
Got the son, Fran. Sorry, Fran. Call you later. Oh, can't do that. Okay. Back to our agenda.
All right.
Just you?
Oh, Ashley.
Oh, and Ashley.
Here,
I'm sorry, Ashley.
Boy, it got quiet.
Where'd the baby go?
she went to bed.
She went to bed, okay. All right, so we got number 4 done. So next on the agenda is, and again, June being kind of like our annual meeting, it's the first meeting after the town meeting, it's when we kind of get ourselves organized, right? So I threw on here a review of our goals. I think that we should be looking at those once a year. And I hope you all did. You see that?
I did.
Okay. Does anybody have any changes, any corrections, additions, that they'd like to make to these goals? I think we've covered almost everything we need to cover, throughout the course of a year. There being none? No changes? No. All right, then we'll say, let's leave them as is for another year. Next up, we have a review of the capital budget that will be coming before us in October. Ashley, you've got that one with the blue line in it, right? That's the one we should be looking at.
Yeah, that's just, I condensed the, big one down so we could just see 23.
Yep. Okay, so as I mentioned to you on the phone, all right, that little bit of a change. Oh, all right, so one quick question. You've got windows for the library twice, once for 8,000, once for 10,000. Is that different? Those two different,
Oh, no, she updated her request to 10. I must have missed deleting it.
okay, yeah, because,
Just her reflection.
yeah, after the blue line, the third one down says replace Dexter Windows 4 for 8,000. So we're actually gonna scratch that?
Yep, and it's just the 10, she had increased it to 10,000 because of inflation.
Okay, so we subtract 8 from there, and then down below, we subtract 8 from there, so that brings it down to I don't have my glasses, 1965, right?
1965, yep.
Okay. So, lots of changes, like you and I talked on the phone.
Yeah.
What happened to the library's roof and gutter system? I mean,
Well,
from
and,
no money to $400,000?
well, in the fire pump system, the Dexter Hall, we've had HVAC issues. It seems like this last year has just been a significant amount of capital and impacts,
I'm
but
assuming these are all in the old section of the buildings, right? I mean, that new addition is only 7 years old?
there's been some identified issues with the newer section too. I think with the leaking of the guttering system was an issue. Was brought to my attention was that it was never installed correctly in the first place. So they've had some leaking above a window for some time, and that was corrected over the winter, but then kind of relayed into this, well, you know, the need to look at repairing the roof, and that's where the $200,000 ask came from, and I think it's started at a $400,000 ask, but without a general scope, so we pared that down to say, we'll do $200,000 and start off with an actual assessment to see what needs to be done.
Okay. Do you want to walk us through your methodology of prioritizing that's been asked a couple of times? Because, again, from the 10-year, we've all got this 10-year, you know, how did you narrow it down? Or what was your criteria for narrowing it down to this proposed capital budget?
Ashley, you wanna go through that real quick?
Yeah, so if you look at the broken down one, so the projects that are down the bottom there, which were part of the larger projects that are on the big capital plan, if you look at them, so the structural review of Station 2, without having somewhere to put them, we can't really knock that. 600,000 is just to knock the building down. So we have nothing to do, we can't put those vehicles anywhere.
Right.
So we're trying, I know Andrew's working with the selectmen on trying to do a fire station. So maybe to include room for those vehicles possibly in a fire station building. And then we can deal with knocking that building down and either fixing it or putting a structure building up there. So we have another station if needed. The townwide radio project, I know we had funded through ARPA, so we're gonna put that, I think Andrew said he has the money to get through there now, so we can put that on hold. And we might not need that if we can get it done with the ARPA money. Cemetery has been asking for an upgrade to their current building that they have over at the cemetery across from Town Hall, to try to give them a office in there and a little bit bigger of a garage, because what they have now doesn't really meet their criteria and some of their equipment has to be left outside. So, we figured instead of just building them a building, we'd fund some money towards a design to see, like a feasibility study to see what they really need and how much it would cost, because the number that they had was from, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, and, they had originally put it on for the capital plan. The money for the rescue truck that's down there, the fire chief had came to me, and because of inflation, the truck that Amazon is funding has increased because of inflation, everything's gone up. So he was gonna ask for additional monies, but we are just saying we're gonna hold off on that for now until we actually see the money from Amazon, and then go from there. If the price is actually increased, then we'll figure out a way of funding either ARPA or if we have leftover capital money. The police station roof, that he has on here, the money that he had funded in the fall, I think originally, it's for improvements, and he was thinking about doing his HVAC project. But upon doing that, we've realized that's now gonna be more than a $200,000 project, so he's possibly going to maybe do his roof with that money, and then also do a feasibility study on the HVAC to see what the best option there would be, and then come back to us with that, and then possibly next year have to fix their HVAC, because it's gonna be we're thinking a heftier project than he originally anticipated. And then, the computer upgrades at police, that $38,000, what I did instead, I bumped the technology, ask that he was doing at 75,000 up to 100, because he usually handles all the upgrades anyway, and with the, upgrades needed at Town Hall and the other buildings, we just, roped it kind of into one, and he was okay with that. And then the archival storage, we are working on digitizing a lot of records, so hopefully that will help some of our, free up some storage space for now. And Town Hall office space renovations is kind of on the back burner until we find somewhere to move some people around, so. That was kind of our way of thinking, is that there's other pieces for the ones at the bottom there that we need to do other pieces to address some of those. So that was why we put the ones above those projects that are up at the top there.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, in the perfect world, if we get $1.6 million in free cash, great, you can do all of them, but we're gonna have to go through the ones that are up top and kind of figure out what is more of a need right now and go from there and do it that way. But those are the ones that we figured we could handle now,
Yeah.
that they didn't have other steps beforehand, so.
Okay. Yeah, and of course, we're not gonna know until September again. That's
Right.
usually when we get our free cash certification letter from the state, sometime in September.
Yeah, our 5-year average has been about, that 1.6 to 1.8.
Right.
And I think that we'll still hit that target,
Yeah.
but again, we don't want to, we just want to budget right now kind of around that average and then figure out where to go once the number comes in.
And there's, and Ashley and I talked earlier that maybe some of their department expenses are rising now more than that, and so we may not get as much free cash.
Right.
Fuel being the big one, okay? I'm sure that the police fuel budget is shot through the roof, okay? Same thing probably with the fire department budget
Right.
and the highway. The big reason for the ask on the dump trucks for the highway department is he just wants to make sure he's got the right equipment at the right time?
I believe that's it. I know he had submitted the request over to Ashley, and it was originally 1. He had bumped it to 2 with the price cost going up.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard the full justification as to why we went from 1 to 2, but we can follow up with that through the review process.
Yep. And this is subject to change.
Correct.
Right.
Yes, this is first draft with request received, so
Yeah.
trying to at least get to that 1.6 number. And the ones that were more on hold, we really do have more questions that need to be answered, and, thankfully, we're still in that position where we can still leverage ARPA for some of the stuff that may be able to fill some of the gaps. Like, with the rescue, we do have a number with Amazon, but, if it's, depending on that final number, and we can, have the further conversations with Amazon to say that we negotiated this a year and a half ago and prices have gone to up 20%, maybe they'll still hold to the spirit of funding for the truck versus just saying, no, you got your money.
But I'm also guessing that their roof price went up. and their
Exactly.
concrete price went up and all the rest of it.
Right, but, we can leverage ARPA as well, too, and just say, we can use it as kind of a little bit of a stopgap measure on that without going back and essentially making it another ask. We can make it happen.
I remember when you sent out a letter back, I thought it was in October or something, outlining your thoughts on the ARPA money. You had committed half of it.
Yep.
You had a bunch of, and so you still got about half of it, I'll call it uncommitted.
Right.
It sounds like everybody wants it committed on there, but.
Right. So I'd say that, of the monies that were appropriated, at this point, there's probably about 300,000 that we could actually turn back for reallocation, because we received a legislative earmark for the digitization project. So it was for $50,000 essentially to get that project done, and I know that we had originally put $250,000 toward it, but that was under the assumption that we have a company come in and pick up all the records and digitize them for us and then just say, done, We decided to work within the $50,000 that we had and instead invest in some scanners and a operations program that would basically kind of read all the documents that are put in there, so that way we can just leverage interns and senior workers to scan all the documents in and then make all the documents searchable. So that's just starting now. We're working that along, but I think that we can probably take that money out of our ARPA commitment right now and reallocate it to a larger project that may have more impact.
All of our records might not bring, I know you guys have heard this one before, but all of our records are in a room downstairs, not climate controlled, not
Getting moldy.
getting mold, right? And Kurt Veskus had come a couple of years ago, starting to promote this idea of an archival room. He'd like to build something out the back, but that's just good.
So, one thing that we do have is that we were actually able to acquire an old shelter, from Spectrum that's right behind, the animal control building that's on town property. The town was actually leasing it to Spectrum during its operation, but that is a climate-controlled building with a backup generator. So the investment in that is just gonna be essentially racking systems, and then once we go through the digitization project, anything that we aren't able to destroy or have to retain, we know that isn't gonna be asked for. We can basically ship over to there and have it under lock and key.
Now, are we talking about all records, all departments?
So, essentially, permanent records, like building permit records, anything involving property, human resource, payroll records, those are permanent. So all that stuff we're gonna look to digitize, and then, essentially, human resource records would be categorized all by individual and type, and then building records would be all categorized by parcel location. So that way, anybody who does a public records request, make it a lot easier to just search, find, print, email.
Right. But there are probably a lot of paper that, yes, can't be digitized for one reason.
Well, you think about all tax assessor records and all that stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of that stuff too, it has maybe a 7-year retention period, and we can basically look and just draw the line in the sand and say, going forward, we're gonna digitize it and put it into the system, and as all the stuff that has a shorter retention, we'll just we'll just destroy as it becomes due, versus going through the legwork of going back and scanning all of it.
So this is our starting point. We have between now and our our special town meeting in October to, one, figure out how to fund the one, hopefully 1.6 comes in, or
Deduct it.
deduct it from this, okay? In some manner, okay?
And Hank, something to think about too, I know, because Dudley came in lower with the school budget, we'll have extra in there, but we still haven't funded anything to stabilization either.
I'm sorry, we haven't, what?
Put
We
it,
didn't fund any money to stabilization this year.
Oh,
yeah,
right, in this, right.
correct.
And
Well,
so-
yeah, even at all,
Right.
so we didn't put any money into stabilization at all this year, so because the budget went up higher, your percentage went down, so we were at, I think, roughly about 8%, I think now we're gonna be at like 7.2, or
Oh,
7.4 of the
Ashley,
budget.
you can count on me, Ashley, trying to find $160,000 in here somewhere, okay, that's going into stabilization. I'm not gonna let that battle go unfought.
And we should have the extra capacity because we put it into the school budget, but they can't use it because Dudley was only at a certain number, so we might have it there, which we can vote out into stabilization too.
And that was an interesting question that was asked, what if we pass and Dudley doesn't? And he made the comment, if 5 over here say yes and 3 say no, is that total voters? Was he talking about an election?
Yeah.
10,000 people?
That's like
Really?
the district meeting would work that way. That's how it would work. You would have all the towns in the district vote, and the majority carries. It's the
Okay,
same
so we
thing, right?
have a bigger population, all right? So we kind of rule the roost if we want it.
We do now, but when the school was built, we didn't. Like, Dudley used to be the bigger town.
Okay, all right. No, I know times.
But you're right,
It was
now
just
it
a
shifted, yeah.
concept. It's just a concept that didn't sound right to me. It didn't sound like, how can one town force another town to spend money, right? And
Yeah,
because I
there's
know
a-
that at one point,
that's
before
a-
town says no, we can't spend money because it has to be dollar for dollar. Why not in this situation, okay? It just sounds weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's an odd concept.
It is an odd concept, right? But obviously, they've thought it through and they got their,
Yeah, you would think it'd be more like the budget, where if one town passed and the other town failed, then it failed.
then it fails.
But-
Right. But no, we can add them
Well,
together.
but with the budget, there's a scenario where there can be a district meeting. It's just it's just not a pleasant scenario, because that is the same scenario where all the towns would go to vote. And if Charlton passes it and Dudley fails it, Charlton would have to force Dudley to pay the number. That's the scenario that exists, but the districts don't like to use it, because you don't want one town dictating what another town's services are gonna be outside of the education service, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that is an operating scenario, that is in the agreement, like that district agreement you referred to, Mr. Matthew, it's in there, it's written in there.
It is.
But it's not, that's not the district meeting, for operating is not a pleasant thing to do, you know?
Yeah. All right, that'll be an interesting meeting next Tuesday, an interesting hearing.
Yep, exactly.
I'm off the golf course by then, maybe I'll. All right, anything else anybody want to bring up in the capital budget? Like I said, this is our starting point, so keep this one handy, okay? And we'll work from there. And like I said, see if you can find $160,000.
And just a reminder, the reason that blue is highlighted is that ambulance gets paid for out of their revolving fund.
Right. Yep, no, we got that part. Next, I put here a review, which was part of our goals, to review the auditor's report and the management letter. And the reason why I put that, I don't know if you've had a chance to review it, to read it. Which one was the auditor's report? But there was some interesting, they pick up a lot of stuff in there about, hey, you guys should be doing this, you guys should be doing that. I'm assuming, Ashley, that you've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb and instituted every single one of their recommendations, right?
Some of them are weird, I don't know. Some of the ones that well, a lot of them are helpful, but some of them I'm like, it's just because it's the government accounting ways are a lot different than how the auditors report stuff. And DOR, if I make the auditor adjustments, DOR yells at me. So some of them I can't, like, physically do, because I can't even, they will not approve my balance sheet.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that weird?
No weirder than if one town votes yes and one town votes no, that town did, okay.
Very true.
It sounds like you're in the same boat. But yeah, no, I went through it and saw that there were a lot of recommendations, and I'm, rather than go through them line by line, unless anybody wants to go through line by line, but I'm going to make an assumption that you've instituted a lot of these, there was no great big discrepancies, it was all, to me, it was housekeeping kind of stuff that they were picking up on.
Yeah, and a lot of it's been cleared up since, so that we had found it, so as they go through the audit and they find stuff, I can fix stuff, just I can't go back because our balance sheet had been submitted, so I just fixed it in FY '22.
Yeah, okay.
I thought that the focus on the cyber was really interesting, that they warned all the towns the same warning, just to be aware of cybersecurity issues.
A lot of towns have been getting hacked.
Yeah.
And the management letter is kind of the same thing. They just basically go through and say, yeah, we found this, we found that. The one thing that I was wondering was, because this is as of, it's June 1st.
A year ago.
A year ago, okay. I'm assuming some of these things were already incorporated, even though we didn't get this till January of this year?
Well, so the long-term obligation entry he wants me to make, basically it's because we report what actual cash, not the interest it's gained, we report the cash value, not the market value of whatever our trust funds are, and they want us to report the market value. So sometimes in a good market, you'll have like a positive entry, and then if the market were to crash, obviously you're gonna have it'd be a negative impact. So, we don't do that now, so after I receive this, we're gonna have to make an adjustment for 6/30, so he said that's fine. But most of the other stuff, and like I said, as we went through, I changed. But there is one on here that he wants us to make the adjustment for, and DOR won't let me, I already asked. They're like, no, that's just an auditor adjustment, he can do that. So,
Now, there was something in there that from now on, we're supposed to report our liabilities for OPEB and for the pension as liabilities. Were they not recorded that way on our balance sheet before, or on the town's asset list?
we don't report our we just report, we just report the part that we're paying down, so no, I don't report what we have left to pay.
Okay, I thought somewhere in that management letter, and I wish I had a glass.
Yeah, that's a weird one too, because DOR doesn't like that.
They don't want you putting the liability on the.
No, because basically it looks like you have a negative cash impact. Even though we have a plan to pay it down, they'll hit me for it.
Okay,
So there's some things, like I said, that are just weird, it's how your accounting standards are for the auditors compared to how your, government accounting standards are, they're a little bit different, so.
yeah. All right, this sounds like the left hand doesn't know the right hand is
It's-
doing kind of thing.
Welcome to the state.
Okay, all right. Then the last item there was the OPEB report, all right, which kind of lists our liabilities, and it said we were doing very, very well, that we were above most towns, 26% to 23%, somewhere in there. Yeah. And that'll go back to Donna insisting that we pay that $250,000 a year, or whatever number we were paying. She started that, 4 or 5 years ago, and it sounds like it's paying off now.
Yep, yeah, so we're ahead of the game for like water sewer, they're ahead of the game. For what because we make the adjustment based on what the report says. So like I made an adjustment for FY 23's budget based on what this report says. So, they're actually ahead of the game.
Did we pay ours out of operating?
So
We did, yes.
this year we paid it out of operating.
That's-
The prior 2 years, we funded it from free cash.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
All right,
So we want to move kind of like those things that we know we're going to have to do every year
Yeah.
into the operating. That's like when we talked about putting a stabilization amount number of getting that into the operating budget, so that way it becomes less of a debate special that it's discretionary, when it should be automatic.
right, yeah. Yeah, the old adage, you pay yourself first.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And that's, where we ultimately like to get to with stabilization as well, but I think, we need the operating flexibility a little bit more before we are fully able to do that.
And, there is no stabilization money on the capital budget, naturally. But I'd also talked about starting up the vehicle stabilization fund and.
So we started that last year with the capital stabilization fund and put $250,000 into it. And I think that any monies that either come in over and above the 1.6 or we're able to pull out of here, we should kind of devise a strategy between how much goes toward general stabilization, how much goes toward capital stabilization. At minimum, I believe, Ashley, we're at what, 8% of our?
8% of your 22 budget, but
Right.
it's like 7.2 or 7.4 of your 23 budget.
Right, so we want to at least maintain that 8%, so that would be the minimum baseline. Luckily, both your capital amount and your regular amount do go toward that total 10%, but we do want the regular stabilization to stand alone. Really that money's gonna go toward offsetting our, hopefully go toward offsetting the cost in our large facility needs. So as we see additional growth from, the large-scale developments coming down the road here, we can tuck more of that operationally away into capital and operational stabilization, and kind of stay lean on our operational budget, so that way we're not incurring as much debt service when we do have to address public safety, fire, community center, what have you.
The better our stabilization percentage to operating budget,
Yep.
the better rates they get on the bonds.
Yeah, of course.
It has an effect, which is, again, why I'm a big proponent of putting money into stabilization.
Yep. No,
I think if it wasn't one of your goals, you probably wouldn't get dinged as bad, but because it's one of your goals and you're not meeting that goal, they ding you for it.
now, you have a specific number in mind this year, even though these are all fluid numbers?
What, to put into stabilization? Well, if you, our goal says we take, dedicate the first 10% of free cash,
Okay.
all right? So if he's projecting, 1.6,
Yep, 160.
that's where I come up with the $160,000.
And that's what we were thinking of, the 200,000 that was the extra appropriation to the school that we could immediately move over and meet that obligation, but then look at elsewhere. I know last year, because the new growth numbers came in so high, we basically made an amendment to raise and appropriate to make that to $1 million total, where it was 750,000 to general and then 250,000 to create the stabilization, or the capital stabilization. And I know, at least talking to the assessor today, that we're already about 150,000 over what our benchmark was for our budgeting. So we'll keep an eye on that to see how far up we are, but, we want to make sure we're kind of capturing that extra levy capacity to address stabilization.
Good. Sounds like we're all on the same page. And that was the last item I had on the agenda list. But we always throw other business unknown at time. Anybody get any unknown business at the time of posting that they want to talk about? Nope. I will reiterate that we're 2 members short of the finance committee. We could use another permanent member, so keep your eyes out to recruit, okay? There is one fellow that's got an email into Noreen. I think they're supposed to meet or something, but the procedure has been, you've got a volunteer, what have you got, like a volunteer checklist or something, or?
The talent bank form.
Yes.
Yeah, so they
You
just
fill
have to
that
indicate
out,
their notification that they would like to.
Send it into Noreen, she interviews you, like she did with you.
Yep.
She interviews you, and then we go from there, okay? But yeah, I'd like to see us get up to full strength committee as soon as we can.
Good.
Ben, anything you wanna bring up?
Not much. I don't know how many people watched the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, but they did vote to create 2 feasibility study committees to both look at the potential of a substation for fire and community center, and kind of look at them in separate tracks and understanding the need for fire.
And a senior center?
Community, senior community center, come up with a game plan, evaluate options, and come up with general price concepts based off of what are the, kind of what's out there and available. So that way, we have a game plan going forward for that, even if it doesn't move forward until after we address fire, police, or public safety. But, I presented to the options of, moving forward with the plan of a public safety building that had already been developed versus going back and redeveloping versus, all the other options that were kind of on the table. And the ultimate decision was that I think, or that the board feels the best course of action is to look at a substation right now, given the growth of the town, the need to kind of spread the department out and buy a little bit more time to see what the new growth does for demand for a larger building for headquarters and police department needs, and then address that down the road. So, and those feasibility studies will be funded out of ARPA, and rededicating a little bit of money that was originally toward the senior center study, since I think we can get it done a little bit more economically, and then basically 50,000 toward each study.
Is there an annual limit to ARPA as far as what we can request?
So no annual limit, but we essentially are getting ARPA in 2 tranches. So it's essentially, it was 2.1 million last year and 2.1 million this year. We have 4 years to spend that money. So, or at least commit that, and I think we have 2 additional years to physically spend it. But because it's under a total amount of $10 million, there's very little strings attached to that. They kind of go toward whatever the town feels best, with the exception of putting it into stabilization or paying off our retirement obligations.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's nice that you have that flexibility.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't need further appropriation, so you don't have to go to town meeting to divvy that money up. It can be within the executive board to decide the best use of it.
Sounds like free funds.
It does. Ashley, you got anything that you would like to mention tonight?
No, so I think everyone's looking good. I know we were worried about fire, with his for overtime, but I'm letting him move money around from expense up to salaries, which we don't usually do, but I just told him if he can get me bottom dollar and he's in the positive, I'll be happy.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys want, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I did ask you to get in touch with the fire chief, because we do have $40,000 left in our reserve fund, which after tonight's meeting is now no longer available to anybody unless we have a special meeting next week, just to see whether or not, that overtime fund, because the last time he was here, he says, well, this'll get me by for a while, but I may be back.
Oh, he's already in the hole. Like, I think when I checked last with him, he was in the hole already by 20 grand.
Where was he? He got 20.
He thinks he doesn't want to have to come back to ask. He thinks he can absorb it. He'll have extra money in somewhere. So not extra money, but savings from other things. So he's gonna try to get me. And I told him if for whatever reason he can't, we'll just have to have. We can make it to the quick Zoom meeting if we had to. But he's looking pretty good right now.
Oh no,
so.
we close it tonight. Tell him I commend him for giving it its best shot. And that I just found my first $40,000 for a stabilization fund. Okay?
And I'm sure as we're working toward October, we might have to talk about, ongoing legal obligations and where we stand with monies that had already been appropriated towards special legal costs and what those are gonna continue to be. So that might be another consideration that we have to think about.
How close do you think the budget that we passed in May is gonna uphold with all of the price increases of basically everything this year?
I think we'll get there.
Yeah?
What do you think, Ashley?
I hope so.
Yep.
Okay, this may be the year where we get through it and then find out certified cash is about $150.
I think, I think that fuel is definitely gonna be another thing that we're gonna, I think we'll have to look at fuel again, definitely. We might have been a little bit too conservative, thinking that the $5 might have just been a quick spike. So we'll have to maybe take another look at that and see where we stand in the fall.
Yeah.
And then whatever other
And
impacts are.
That legal article we voted, what was it, 2 years ago? That 300,000 for legal for VGG solar, and that money is gone officially. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I would say we have to have another conversation about how long these legal obligations are gonna continue and how much more we have to put toward it.
So there's been nothing out there about the LNG project. Where is that?
Ongoing construction.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
I just
It's
haven't driven down 60.
the very end, right before you get to the South Bridge, right next to Incom. They've done considerable site clearing. They're doing shotcrete foundations for the tank right now.
Yeah.
We're still kind of negotiating back and forth as far as the town's obligation of oversight, but they seem to be generally cooperating on 90% of the things, so we're getting there.
All right.
But it's moving forward.
Because it's easy to see the Amazon progress, because I drive up to 20 all the time, but I don't often get down.
Well, they're looking out because, they're both blasting at the same time, and everybody immediately points the finger over to Amazon, even if they live on the Southbridge line.
And there's been no rain, so they don't have to deal with any runoff issues
Yeah.
yet.
True. Does,
Amazon got some nice grass growing over there to.
oh, they're doing a
Right,
great
with
job.
their hill.
Yes. Do we feel that there's a need to meet in July? Or do we want to take July off? Anybody have a feel?
Take July off.
Want to take July off?
I would likely be unavailable as I'm taking a big, giant, beautiful, well-deserved vacation.
All right.
Yay!
What do you think, Ashley? No,
I don't see any, because, if any, I have had a couple, obviously, budget transfers, but they've mostly all been within people's own budgets, so unless I have to go between, but I can just alert you in August if you'd rather, but I don't think you have to vote, it's just to make you aware that we
Yeah.
moved money around,
Okay,
so.
all right, and we'll communicate by email.
Yeah,
And if we feel we're gonna meet in August to kick off for next year, you know, that's when we're gonna really start getting into the capitals budget. And we may wanna ask some of these people to come before us and say, so what do you mean when you say $400,000 or whatever, all right? But we can do that by email. Did you get an email address yet?
I don't believe so. I haven't heard.
Follow up.
Huh?
We'll
I'll
follow up on
email
that.
Jeff,
Yeah.
yeah, email Jeff
that-
tomorrow. I think he's off, but we'll deal with it
All
Tuesday.
right.
Yeah, we have a pretty substantial upgrade going on at the dispatch center. I know he's been intimately involved with. And that was money that we appropriated about 2 years ago, finally, getting that project
No, the-
together.
The reason I keep asking about the emails, because emails between all of us are public records, and I'd hate to have your
Right.
personal.
Private, right.
Right.
Smart.
Question. All right, there being nothing else before the committee, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All right, I got 2 seconds, that's good. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Here,
Yes.
yes. Christian with an E, yes or no?
Yeah.
Christian with an I, yes or no?
Yes.
It is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll-
All right,
Maybe we'll see you in August.
Bye.
Thank you, have a great vacation, well deserved.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.